Well, if you don't have God on your mind, on the agenda always, then of course the uncertainty of living becomes of paramount importance. And the gains and losses are evaluated without the assurance of God. It's a very unhappy situation. A secular philosophical group doesn't fall back on the assurance of God. It's constantly waging with what's important. Might be the Holocaust, it might be war, it might be political difficulties, it might be the problem of government, it might be questions of democracy and so on, and whether things can be achieved or not. Things all become important in themselves. You know, death is of paramount importance in itself, and it's an evil, and it's because I can't see anything beyond it. And so it becomes a life of fear. And fear, of course, makes you focus on anything but that which is good and lovely. Whereas, if you choose to trust that God exists, then you are free from fear. And then simply to focus on that which is good and lovely, which you're not free from, because that is all part and parcel of what God is, that which is good and lovely. By definition, wouldn't be your choice of God otherwise. He personifies what you value. You become ecstatically happy, assured. You know, if you choose to practice, even in a secular state, to think on that which is good and lovely, and I've done this long before I was Christian or religious. As a 12 or 13-year-old, I practiced. I decided I'm going to be happy. I shall enjoy what is to be enjoyed. And of course you become, hopeful. Now, you don't necessarily see God, of course. You might not have got the concept of God. I hadn't. My parents were not religious or godly or, they were normal, sort of well-off citizens. Yeah. But if you choose to think of the good things and appreciate them, and choose to enjoy, choose to be happy, choose to be pleased to be with, even teachers that were very difficult from my perspective, I'm going to enjoy his class. I'm going to do it well. And of course, enjoying his class meant I was doing it well. I was attentive. I'm on the ball. I'm focused. And he knows it. I'm giving him my attention. I become, in his eyes, a good student, of course. Oh, I'm not at risk with this man any longer. I found benefits flowed from all over. As I say, I was known as happy in my class and to my friends for about a year or so, till I hit adolescence and longed for a girlfriend. So then I was, of course, focused on what I longed for and didn't have. Oh, that didn't make me happy at all. Oh, dear. What a shame. Fancy falling victim to that. You would think I had learnt my lesson, wouldn't you? From my good experience. Well, I guess we need to hear about God to choose him, and I did hear about God very loosely in my society and didn't think much of the possibility. Wasn't at all convinced that this God was that good either, of course. I mean, an Old Testament God is hardly attractive, is it? I mean, you might follow him out of fear and dread, but it's not likely to be out of love. But fortunately, in secular fashion, I could reject him and therefore reject the fear and dread. I rejected him on the grounds of sheer probability. It looked like make-believe to me. And I became very focused on what was rational and what was logical and hard facts and a materialist philosophy. Deep, yes. I mean, Platonic and so on. Plato, you know. But a kind form. I became a humanist and so on. Very earnest I was too. And what did happen? Well, someone gave me a book. Hindu guru chap, Paramahansa Yogananda, who was talking about the amazing people in his life. All of which in some sense were related to God. Novel experience, but fascinating because of supernatural powers and the magic of India and so forth, you know. And a need, of course. I realized this life was not fulfilling. There's a need there, isn't there? I want to be of true benefit to people. How do I do it? I'm a humanist, right. How successful is that going to be? And of course I'd realized by then, having been at uni for about 3 or 4 years, that the problems of the world were not a shortage of food. There's plenty of food, just not shared out properly. So it wasn't economics, and it wasn't some sort of farming inadequacy or something like that. It wasn't technology that was needed in that way. Perhaps it's political, it's not being shared out properly. So there's a fascination with political theory, which of course is pretty close to Platonic study and so on. Not that Plato was democratic, of course, quite the contrary. Any more, incidentally, than religion is democratic. It's extremely autocratic. Oh, except the diaconate and the church vote. And that causes havoc, of course, when they vote the minister out, poor chap. And one minority group never gets its way, so it splits off officially as a daughter church or sister church, just that they never talk to each other afterwards. But coming back to my point, it wasn't politics that was wrong. It seemed to be something deeper, the psychology of the person. Oh, I missed out sociology. I wasn't terribly impressed with that, but I did do it, of course, in my first year, but nothing more than a 101 course, you know. I didn't hold much hope for it. But psychology, oh yes, perhaps I should be a psychologist. Understand what's going on here in the mind. But then somewhere in this, of course, whilst I was still training to be an economist, of course, well, I ran out of money, which was a great blessing, because it meant I had to stop. And I wanted to do a job that was worthwhile in itself, not some grandiose theoretical thing in World Bank that didn't vanish your local people at all, the reality of people in the world. You know, I couldn't see how my university was doing Colchester and Essex any good, even though it was supposedly Essex University? In what sense was it benefiting Essex? I felt like a parasite, really. So I opt to be a trainee social worker, and I've gone through this story before, haven't I? Let me see if I can return to where I started on this discourse. Ah, yes. What it relied upon was coming into contact with someone who was very affected by a trust in God, Paramahansa. And it wasn't the Christian God particularly, but it wasn't not, and it was, I don't know what it was really. But it appealed much more. It could speak to me. And I realized, my goodness, I would like God to exist. Ah, that's different. Now you see, instead of, I realized I'd not wanted God to exist before. I wanted God to not exist, in effect. Well, especially given my view of God, of course. Now, given my view of what God should be, that's quite different. And that seemed to accord rather more with Paramahansa's view of things, rather less Christian and certainly not obsessed with crucifixion and sacrifice and judgment and so on. And so now things were different. I wanted God to exist. Oh, well, you mean I'd chosen to believe that he didn't before? Well, why not choose to believe that he did? Would that make my life better? Well, I suspect it would. Certainly getting a potentially rosy picture of it from Paramahansa autobiography. And of course I realized, wow, you've changed, Marsha. You now have a desire for God to exist. Why is that? Well, I suppose on reflection it was because I now saw God in a different light, as the personification of what I truly valued. That's different. Yes, I could love him. Yes, I want him to exist. Yes, I may as well live according to a choosing that he does, rather than choosing that he doesn't. What do I gain by believing that he doesn't? Nothing. This very sad secular preoccupation with all that's wrong. I'm going to be preoccupied with him, all that I value and all that is right. Do you see, it all worked together. But I needed to hear, didn't I? And I didn't hear from the religion of my day, perhaps because Christianity had ossified, is it? Turned to stone, really, in Christians, as in English society. It was a hangover, a relic, a museum piece of the past. In the eyes of, well, much of the population anyway, especially the intelligentsia, of course, which I felt I was part of. I mean, I'm a university guy, aren't I? A philosopher and master of logic, in fact. Thank you, Dad. So, if there's a desire for God, then you choose to believe. If there's a desire not for God, then you choose to believe in there not being a God. Which of the two choices serves you best? Choose you this day whom you will serve. Bless you. And I'm sure you are blessed. There's no way you'd be listening to me otherwise. Bless you. Thank you, Dad.